I drove to the lake house on November 15th, my 68th birthday. I'd made Robert's favorite casserole, tuna, peas, cream of mushroom soup, the recipe he taught me 40 years ago when we first moved in. Mark said he wanted to celebrate at the house, our house, the one Robert and I built with our own hands in 1985. The driveway was already full when I arrived. Mark's SUV, Jennifer's sedan, Sarah's minivan. Even Tom had flown in from California. I felt a flutter of joy, my whole family, together, for me. I walked through the front door carrying the casserole dish, and I stopped. The dining room table was set, formal china, the good silverware, candles lit. My family was already seated, Mark at the head of the table, Jennifer to his right, Sarah and Tom on the sides. The grandchildren, Brandon, Emily, Emma, squeezed in between. There was no chair for me. I stood in the doorway, the casserole dish warm in my hands. Nobody got up. Nobody moved to make space. Mark looked at me, and he said the words that changed everything. "Mom, we need to talk about your future. You don't deserve to keep holding on to this place. It's too much for you." The room went silent. I could hear the lake through the window, the sound of water lapping against the dock, Robert's dock, the one he built the summer Mark was born. "What do you mean?" My voice sounded far away. Jennifer spoke next. Her tone was gentle, practiced. "Barbara, we've been managing the property for 3 years, paying the taxes, handling the maintenance. You barely visit anymore. It doesn't make sense for you to keep it." I looked at the walls. Family photos everywhere. Robert and me breaking ground in '85. Mark's first fish caught off that dock. Sarah's high school graduation party on the lawn. 40 years of memories. My memories in my house. "Mark's name is on the property taxes now," Jennifer continued. "We've established residency. We live here more than you do. It's time to make it official." I saw papers on the side table, property tax bills, but the name on them wasn't mine. It was Mark's. "You don't deserve a seat at this table anymore, Mom." Mark's voice was firm, final. "We're keeping the house." I stood there holding that casserole. In the doorway of the home I'd built with my husband, the husband who died 5 years ago and left it to me, just me, and my son, my oldest child, the boy I'd raised alone after Robert's heart attack, was telling me I had no place here. "I think you should go," Jennifer said. "We'll talk about this later, when you've had time to think." I set the casserole on the entry table. I didn't cry, not yet. I walked back to my car, started the engine, drove the 40 minutes back to my condo in town, and I couldn't stop shaking. I drove home that night in shock, but by morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to find out if my son had stolen my house. Let me tell you how we got here. Robert and I bought that land in 1984. 40 acres on the lake, trees everywhere. No house, no dock, just raw land and a dream. We were both 39 years old, 3 kids. Mark was 4, Sarah was 3, Tom was just a baby. We lived in town then, a small ranch house, 2 bedrooms for 3 kids, tight. Robert was a contractor. He said we'd build the lake house ourselves, weekends and summers, our retirement place, somewhere the family could gather forever. It took us 2 years. Robert did the framing. I helped with everything else. The kids ran around in the dirt. Mark used to collect rocks from the lakeshore. Sarah picked wildflowers. Tom was too little to remember, but he was there, in a playpen on the grass while we worked. We moved in during the summer of 1986. Robert planted yellow roses out front, peace roses, his favorite. He said they'd bloom every June, a reminder that we'd built something that would last. We did. For 38 years, that house was ours. Every Thanksgiving, every 4th of July, every birthday, the kids grew up there. They brought their own families. Grandchildren learned to fish off that dock. It was exactly what Robert dreamed it would be. Then Robert died. February 7th, 2019. Heart attack. He was 71. I was 63. I had 3 children, and they couldn't have been more different. Mark, the oldest, had always been the demanding one. 45 now. He ran a commercial real estate business, or he tried to. It never quite took off the way he wanted. He was married to Jennifer for 18 years. 2 kids, Brandon, 15, and Emily, 12. Good kids, expensive kids, private school, country club. The kind of lifestyle that always seemed just out of Mark's reach. That's what drove him, I think. The need to prove he'd made it, to show everyone he was successful. The stakes for him were his ego, his image. His flaw was that he'd take shortcuts to get there. Sarah, my middle daughter, was 43, the peacemaker. She'd married Carlos Martinez, an architect. They had 1 daughter, Emma, who was 12. Sarah worked as an HR manager at the hospital. She lived 45 minutes away, close enough to visit, far enough to avoid family drama. Sarah's goal was always to keep everyone happy. Her stakes were relationships. She couldn't bear the thought of family conflict. Her flaw was the same as mine. She was a people pleaser. She'd stay silent rather than rock the boat, even when she knew something was wrong. Tom, the youngest, was 40 now. He'd moved to California right after college and barely looked back. Software engineer, good money, no wife, no kids. He called on major holidays. That was it. I think he wanted distance from all of us, from the expectations, from Mark's drama. I couldn't blame him. Over the years, I'd helped Mark. More than I should have. $75,000 when his business needed. Capital. I refinanced my condo to get it. $45,000 for Jennifer's student loans when they got married. $30,000 a year for 3 years. $90,000 total for Brandon and Emily's private school tuition. $25,000 for their wedding at the lake house. I paid their country club membership for 5 years. Another $15,000. The car I bought them when Jennifer's broke down. The furniture when they moved. The endless calls. Mom, can you help? $250,000 over 15 years. I thought I was building his future. I thought I was being a good mother. After Robert died, the house felt too big, too quiet. Every corner had a memory. Robert's reading chair by the window, the coffee maker he'd fixed with duct tape because he said it still worked fine, the drawer full of fishing lures he'd organized by size. I'd walk through the rooms and feel his absence like a weight. I started spending more time at my condo in town. It was smaller. 2 bedrooms, manageable, no ghosts. I could sleep there without reaching for him in the night, without waking up and forgetting, just for a second, that he was gone. But I'd drive out to the lake house every few weeks, water the roses, check the dock, make sure everything was okay. It was still mine, still ours, in a way. 3 years ago, Mark made a suggestion. Mom, let me manage the lake house for you. I'll handle the property taxes, the maintenance, the upkeep. You don't need to worry about it. Just enjoy it when you want to visit. It seemed reasonable, helpful even. Mark and Jennifer started spending more time there. Weekends, school breaks. They said the kids loved it. I was glad someone was using it. The house was meant for family, but there were signs. Small things I ignored. Mark changed the locks. He said the old ones were broken. When I asked for a key, he said he'd get me one. 2 weeks passed, then a month. I finally asked again, and he acted like I was being difficult. Mom, you have a key. I gave it to you. He hadn't, but I let it go. I didn't want to seem paranoid. The mail started going to his address. Property tax bills, utility statements, insurance renewals. Mark said he'd set up automatic payments. Easier that way. He'd forward me copies if I wanted them. I said that was fine. I didn't need the paperwork cluttering my condo. Then I drove out to the lake house one Saturday, unannounced. Mark and Jennifer were there, with a contractor talking about renovations, knocking out a wall, expanding the deck. They looked startled when I walked in. Mom, we didn't know you were coming. It's my house, I said. I don't need to announce myself. Jennifer recovered quickly. Of course not. We're just planning some updates. The deck is rotting in places. We thought we'd fix it as a gift for you. I looked at the plans spread on the table. They were extensive. Expensive. I didn't ask who was paying. I thanked them and left. I should have asked questions, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want to cause problems. That was my mistake. I was conflict avoidant. Always had been. Even when Robert was alive, I'd smooth things over. Keep the peace. Make everyone happy. It's how I survived 30 years as an elementary school teacher. How I raised 3 kids. How I held a marriage together through tight money and hard years. But it meant I didn't see what Mark was doing. Or maybe I saw it and didn't want to believe it. My neighbor Carol, she lives across the lake in her own place, she'd asked me about it 6 months ago. We'd been friends since Robert and I built the house. She was widowed too, 8 years now. She'd been a financial advisor for 30 years before she retired. Sharp, direct. The kind of friend who tells you the truth even when you don't want to hear it. We have coffee every Tuesday morning at my condo. She brings a casserole. It's been our routine since Robert died. Tuna casserole. Green bean casserole. Whatever she's made that week, she says it's because I don't eat enough. I think it's because she's lonely too. Barbara, she said one Tuesday morning, I drove past your place last week. Mark and Jennifer were there with a moving truck. Are they moving in? Just bringing some furniture, I said. Storage, probably. Carol looked at me over her coffee cup. She has this way of looking at you that makes you feel like she can see right through whatever you're saying. But she didn't push. Not then. That's all? She asked. That's all, I said. She nodded, changed the subject, but I could tell she was thinking something. I'd wake up sometimes at 3 a.m. in my condo, the room dark, silent. I'd think about the lake house, about Mark and Jennifer there, about the locks I couldn't open, the mail I didn't see, the renovations I didn't approve, and then I'd tell myself I was being paranoid, ungrateful. Mark was helping. That was all. He was taking care of the house so I didn't have to. That's what good sons do. That night, after Carol's question, I pulled out Robert's will. I keep it in my desk drawer. I'd read it 100 times since he died, looking for comfort in his words, in his handwriting on the witness signatures. The lake house was mine, just mine. Robert had been specific about it. To my beloved wife, Barbara, I leave our lake house and property in full, to do with as she sees fit. The words were clear, legal, definitive. But Mark's voice was in my head. Let me manage it for you, Mom. You don't need to worry. I put the will away, closed the drawer, and I didn't think about it again. Not until that birthday dinner. Not until my son looked me in the eye and told me I didn't deserve a seat at my own table. That's when I knew I'd let it happen. I'd ignored the signs. I'd chosen peace over protection. And Mark had taken everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed in my condo, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mark's face, heard his voice. You don't deserve a seat at this table anymore? By 6 a.m, I gave up. I made coffee in the mug Robert gave me on our 30th anniversary, the one with the faded lake house photo on the side. I sat at my kitchen table and I made a decision. I needed to know what was happening to my property. Legally. Officially. Not just what Mark told me. At 8:30, I called the county recorder's office. The woman who answered sounded young, patient. Recorder's office, this is Amanda. How can I help you? I need to check on a property deed, I said. My husband and I own it now. He passed away. But I want to make sure the paperwork is correct. Of course. I can help you with that. What's the property address? I gave her the lake house address. Heard her typing. Okay, let me pull that up. A pause. Yes, I see it here. The property is in the name of Barbara Thompson, sole owner, transferred from joint ownership in February 2019. My hands relaxed on the phone. So my name is on it, not my son's. Just yours, ma'am. Another pause. Although, someone called about this property a couple months ago, September, I think, asking about title transfer procedures. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Just an inquiry. Wanted to know the process for transferring property, adding a name to a deed, that kind of thing. I didn't handle it myself, but there's a note in the file. Did they say who they were? The note doesn't say, just that someone called. Is everything okay? Yes, I said. My voice sounded steady even though my hands were shaking. Thank you. Can I come down and get a copy of the deed? Today? Absolutely. We're open until 4. I hung up, sat there for a moment. Someone had called about my property. In September, 2 months before my birthday. 2 months before Mark told me I didn't deserve to keep it. He'd been planning this. I grabbed my purse and drove to Carol's house. I needed to tell someone who would understand. Carol answered the door in her gardening clothes, dirt on her knees. She took one look at my face and said, "Come in, I'll make coffee." We sat in her kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd had coffee every Tuesday for 3 years. But this wasn't Tuesday. This was Saturday morning, and I was falling apart. "They took my house," I said. "Mark and Jennifer, they've been planning it." Carol poured the coffee, set a mug in front of me, sat down. "Tell me everything," I told her. The birthday dinner, the property tax bills with Mark's name, the way they'd told me to leave, Jennifer saying they'd established residency. Carol listened. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "Do you have the deed?" "I'm going to get it today. I called the county office. It's still in my name. But someone called them in September asking about title, transfers. Mark. Probably." Carol stood up, went to a drawer, pulled out a notepad. She started writing. "Okay, here's what you need to do. Get the deed. That's first. Then check the property tax records. Find out who's been paying them and whose name is on the bills. If Mark's been paying them without your authorization, that's a red flag. He said he was helping. Helping doesn't mean taking over." Carol's voice was firm. She'd been a financial advisor for 3 decades. She knew what she was looking at. "Barbara, this sounds like someone trying to establish a claim to your property. You need to document everything." "I don't even know where to start." "Start with the records. Tax bills, utility bills, insurance, anything with the property address. Find out whose name is on them now." I felt something shift, a little bit of the fear turning into something else. Anger, maybe, or just clarity. "I have old property tax bills in my file cabinet from before I let Mark handle things." "Good, compare them. See what changed." We spent the next hour going through my filing cabinet. I'd kept everything. Old habits from 30 years of teaching. Every bill, every receipt, every piece of paper related to the lake house. The property tax bills from 4 years ago had my name, my mailing address, the condo in town. 3 years ago, they switched. Mark's name, Mark's address at the lake house. "He changed the mailing address," Carol said. She was reading over my shoulder. "Did you authorize that?" "No. He said he'd set up automatic payments. He'd handle it. I thought, you thought he was helping." "Yes." Carol pointed at the bill. "Look at this line, property owner. It still says your name, but the mailing address is his. That's deliberate. He's not on the deed yet, but he's creating a paper trail, making it look like he's the one managing the property, living there, paying for it. Why would he do that? Adverse possession. If he can prove he's been treating the property as his own, living there, paying taxes, maintaining it, for long enough, he could make a legal claim. It's a long shot, but in some cases it works." I felt cold. "How long?" "Depends on the state. Years, usually. But he's been at it for 3 years already. And if you're not using the property, if you're not asserting your ownership..." She trailed off. "Barbara, he's building a case." My phone buzzed on the table. A text message. From Mark. "Mom, we need to talk. Yesterday got out of hand. Can I call you?" I stared at the screen. Carol leaned over. "Read it." "What are you going to say?" she asked. "I don't know." "Tell him you need time." I typed back, "I need some time to think. I'll call you when I'm ready." His response came immediately. "Don't do anything rash. Let's handle this as a family." Handle what? I thought. The house you're trying to steal, but I didn't type that. I put the phone down. I'm going to the county office, I said. I'm getting that deed. Carol nodded. Good. And Barbara? You should probably talk to a lawyer, someone who knows elder law, property disputes. I can't afford. You refinanced your condo for $75,000 for Mark's business. You paid $90,000 for private school. You can afford a lawyer for yourself. She was right, but the thought terrified me. Lawyers meant conflict. It meant admitting this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It meant going to war with my own son. Just a consultation, Carol said. Find out what your options are. That's all. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. I drove to the county recorder's office. It was in the old courthouse downtown. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, the kind of place that smells like old paper and copy machine toner. Amanda, the woman I'd spoken to on the phone, was behind the counter. She recognized my name when I signed in. Oh, you're the one I talked to this morning. About the lake house property? Yes. I pulled the file. The deed is clear. Your name only. Do you want a certified copy? Please. She disappeared into a back room. Came back 5 minutes later with a document. Official seal. County stamp. My name. Barbara Thompson, sole owner. I held it in my hands. The paper was thick, substantial, real. Is everything okay? Amanda asked. She looked concerned. Yes, I said. Thank you. I drove back to my condo, sat in the parking lot for a minute. The deed was on the passenger seat next to me. Proof. Legal proof. The house was mine. But Mark had my keys. Mark was paying the bills. Mark was living there with his family, and Mark had called the county office 2 months ago, asking how to transfer property. I picked up my phone, searched for elder law attorney near me. The first result was a firm downtown, Chen and Associates, specializing in estate planning, elder abuse, property disputes. I stared at the phone number. My finger hovered over the call button. This was real. If I called, it meant I was admitting my son was trying to take my house. It meant lawyers. It meant family warfare. It meant Mark would know I didn't trust him, but he'd already shown me I couldn't trust him, hadn't he? I pressed the button. The phone rang twice. Chen and Associates, this is David Chen speaking. My name is Barbara Thompson, I said. I think my son is trying to steal my house. David Chen's office was on the 3rd floor of a downtown building. Neat, professional. Diplomas on the wall, a dish of hard candies on his desk. He was maybe 50, wore glasses, and had the kind of calm demeanor that made you feel like everything would be okay. He offered me a candy, butterscotch. I took one just to have something to do with my hands. Tell me what's going on, Mrs. Thompson, I told him. The birthday dinner, Mark's announcement, the property tax bills, the county clerk's mention of a September inquiry. I spread the documents on his desk, the deed I'd picked up yesterday, the old tax bills with my name, the new ones with Mark's address. David picked up the deed. He studied it carefully, read every line, checked the county seal, the signatures, the transfer date from Robert's death. This is clear, he said. You are the sole owner of this property. Your husband transferred it to you entirely upon his death. There's no ambiguity here. I sat in that office looking at the deed in his hands. My name, Barbara Thompson. The same name I'd had for 68 years. The same name that signed the mortgage in 1984. The same name that made every payment for 15 years until we owned it free and clear. 40 years of marriage. 38 years of memories in that house. Robert and me, young and hopeful, breaking ground on empty land. Mark as a little boy, collecting rocks from the lake shore. Sarah picking wildflowers. Tom in a playpen while we hammered and painted and built our dream. And my own son tried to steal it. I felt the weight of it then. Not just the betrayal, but the enormity of what Mark had attempted. He'd tried to take the one thing Robert left me, the one place that held everything we'd been together. Mrs. Thompson, David's voice was gentle. "Are you okay?" "I realized something," I said. "I didn't know my son anymore." David nodded. He'd probably seen this before. Families tearing each other apart over property, over money, over things that seemed more important than love. "The deed is in your favor," he said, "but let's look at the rest. What else do you have?" I showed him the property tax records. He spread them on the desk, compared the old bills to the new ones. "He's been paying the property taxes for 3 years," David said, "and he changed the mailing address to the lake house, his lake house address." "Is that legal?" "It's not illegal, but it's strategic." David pulled out a notepad, started writing. "He's creating a paper trail, making it look like he's the one maintaining the property, living there, acting as the owner. If he can prove continuous use and payment of taxes for long enough, he could attempt an adverse possession claim." Carol mentioned that. She's right to be concerned. David looked at me over his glasses. But adverse possession requires a long time period, years, usually 7 to 15 depending on the state. He's only been at it for 3, and you're still the legal owner. You haven't abandoned the property. You visit. You maintain ownership interest. His claim would be weak. So I'm safe? From adverse possession? Probably. But that doesn't mean he's not trying to establish control in other ways. David tapped the tax bills. "These create a pattern. He's positioning himself as the de facto owner. If this went to court, he could argue you gave him implied permission to manage the property, that you transferred responsibility to him." "I didn't." "I believe you, but we need more evidence of his intentions, more proof that this wasn't just family helping family, that he was actively trying to take ownership." I thought about my email, about the way Mark and Jennifer communicated. I'd given Mark access to my email account years ago when he helped me set up online banking. He said it would be easier to forward me important documents. "I have an email account," I said. "Mark has the password. He's used it before to forward me things." David leaned forward. "Do you still have access?" "Yes." "Check it. Tonight. Look for anything about the property, any correspondence between Mark and Jennifer, anything that might show planning or intent." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. Carol was there. She'd insisted on coming over, said she wanted to be there when I looked. I logged into my email, scrolled through. Most of it was junk, newsletters, shopping receipts. But then I saw a forwarded message from Mark's email to mine, dated 8 months ago. I clicked it open. It was an email chain, Mark to Jennifer, Jennifer to Mark, forwarded to my account probably by accident, or maybe Mark had meant to send something else and hit the wrong button. Mark to Jennifer. "Once we establish residency, we can start looking into adverse possession options. She barely visits anymore. The house is essentially ours. We just need to make it official." Jennifer's response. "How long does that take? Can we speed it up?" Mark. "Years, usually. But we can build the case, pay the taxes, change the utilities, make improvements, show we've been treating it as our property. When the time comes, we'll have documentation." Jennifer. "What if she notices?" Mark. "She won't. You know how she is. Too trusting. She'll think I'm helping. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late." I stared at the screen. Carol read over my shoulder. "That son of a—" Carol stopped herself, put her hand on my shoulder. "Barbara, this is premeditation. This is proof he planned to take your house." "They were laughing at me?" I said. My voice sounded hollow. "Too trusting." That's what he said, like it was a weakness. It's not a weakness to trust your family. It was for me. I forwarded the email chain to David. Then I kept digging. Found more emails. Mark to a business partner. "My mother's property will secure the loan. She won't mind." Mark to his accountant. "Can I claim the lake house as a business expense? I'm using it for client meetings." He'd been using my property as collateral, as a tax deduction, as his own personal asset. Carol made more coffee. We sat there in my kitchen until midnight, documenting everything. Screenshots, forwarded emails, printed copies. By the time we finished, we had a file folder 2 inches thick. The next day, I went back to David's office. He reviewed the emails, read them carefully, made notes. "This is good," he said. "Very good. This shows intent, planning, manipulation. A court would take this seriously. What else do you need? Utility bills, insurance, anything else with the property address. Let's see how far he took this." I called the electric company, the water company, the insurance company. Mark had switched everything to his name 3 years ago. Property owner, Mark Thompson, mailing address, the lake house. He'd even hired a property management company, paid them to handle maintenance, lawn care, snow removal, all without telling me, all while claiming he was just helping. I gave David copies of everything. He organized it all in a binder, tab by tab, proof, evidence, documentation. "You have a strong case," David said. "The deed is yours. The emails show intent to defraud. The financial records show systematic takeover. If Mark tries to claim any ownership, we can fight it. What do I do now?" "I recommend filing a legal claim to protect your property. We'll establish clear ownership, set boundaries, make sure Mark knows he has no legal right to the house." I nodded, but my hands were shaking. This was real. I was taking my son to court. "There's one more thing," David said. "Do you have anyone who can testify on your behalf? Anyone who can confirm your intentions? That you never gave Mark permission to take over the property?" "Carol, my neighbor. She's known me for 40 years. "Good. Anyone else? Family?" I thought about Sarah, my middle daughter. She'd been quiet at the birthday dinner, uncomfortable. Maybe she knew something was wrong. That night, I called Sarah. "Mom," she said. She sounded relieved to hear from me. "I've been thinking about you, about what happened at Mark's." "It's not Mark's," I said. "It's my house, and I need to know something. Did Mark tell you what he was planning?" Silence. "Sarah?" "Mom, She trailed off. I didn't know all of it, but I knew something was wrong. The way he talked about the house, like it was his. I should have said something. "I'm sorry." "Will you help me?" Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you need?" "I need you to tell the truth. About what Mark said. About what you knew." "He's my brother, Mom. And I'm your mother. And this is my house." I heard her breathing on the other end of the line. Thinking, deciding. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll help you." But after we hung up, I sat in the dark in my living room, and I wondered if I'd just asked my daughter to choose between her mother and her brother, if I'd just split my family in half. Carol came over that night, Tuesday, casserole night. She brought tuna noodle. We sat at my kitchen table surrounded by evidence folders, legal documents, email printouts. "You're doing the right thing," Carol said. "Am I?" Sarah barely agreed to help. "Tom won't even return my calls. Mark..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "Mark made his choice. You're just protecting what's yours." I looked at the evidence. All of it. Proof that my son had tried to steal my house, that he'd called me too trusting like it was a joke, that he'd planned this for months, maybe years. David asked me a question I couldn't answer. I said, "What question?" He asked if I was ready to lose my son. Carol was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Barbara, you already lost him. When he decided to steal from you, when he stopped seeing you as his mother and started seeing you as an obstacle, that's when you lost him." Maybe she was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. I sat in David Chen's office 3 days later. He had the evidence organized in front of him. The binder was thick now, tabs for each category: deed, tax records, emails, utility bills, witness statements from Carol. "You have a very strong case, Mrs. Thompson," David said. He offered me a hard candy from the dish. I took one, cinnamon this time. "Mark has no legal claim to your property. The deed is clear. The emails show intent to defraud. If we file to protect your ownership, a judge will side with you. If we file, I repeated. Yes. I looked at the photographs I'd brought with me, old ones, from the box in my closet. Robert and me in 1985, standing on raw land. Both of us 39 years old, young, hopeful. Robert's arm around me. Behind us, surveyor stakes in the ground, the beginning of everything. Another photo, Mark at 5 years old holding a hammer that was bigger than he was, pretending to help his dad. Sarah picking wildflowers in the background, Tom in my arms, just a baby. Another, the house half built, framing up, Robert on the roof, me painting trim boards on the ground, the kids running through sawdust and dirt. Another, the finished house. Summer of '86, all of us on the front porch, Robert's yellow roses blooming. We looked so happy. I sat in David's office looking at those photographs. 43 years of marriage, 38 years of memories. And I realized I didn't know this person anymore. The man who wrote those emails, who called me too trusting, like it was a weakness, who tried to steal the one thing Robert left me. That wasn't the little boy in these pictures. That wasn't my son. What happens if I file? I asked. We submit a legal claim establishing clear ownership. We notify Mark that he has no right to the property. We set boundaries. If he refuses to acknowledge your ownership, we can pursue further action, eviction, trespass, whatever it takes to protect what's yours. And if I don't file? David was quiet for a moment. Then he continues what he's doing. Maybe he backs off now that you've confronted him, or maybe he escalates, tries to formalize his claim, files for adverse possession in a few more years, contests your will when you die. I've seen families tear themselves apart over less. My family is already torn apart. Then maybe it's time to protect yourself instead of trying to hold them together. I drove from David's office to the lake house. I hadn't been there since the birthday dinner. 10 days ago. It felt like a lifetime. Mark's car wasn't in the driveway, neither was Jennifer's. The house looked quiet, empty. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at it. We'd built this, Robert and me, with our own hands. Every board, every nail, every decision about where windows should go and which direction the deck should face. This was ours? No, this was mine now. Robert left it to me, in writing, in his will, with specific instructions. This was my house. I got out of the car, walked down to the dock. November morning, cold. The lake was gray, flat, no boats, no sound except water lapping against the pilings. The same pilings Robert had sunk himself 38 years ago. I remembered that day, how proud he was when he got them level, how he stood right here in this exact spot and said, "This is it, Barb, our place." I closed my eyes, and I was back there. 1985. Summer. Hot sun. Clear blue sky. Robert and me, standing on empty land. Surveyor stakes in the ground marking where the house would be. The kids running through tall grass, playing, making up games. Mark found a frog. Sarah screamed. Tom laughed that baby laugh that sounded like hiccups. Robert's arm around me, his voice in my ear. "This is it, Barb, our place. The kids will bring their kids here. We'll have Thanksgivings and birthdays and summers. This'll be ours forever." I'd believed him. I'd believed in forever. I opened my eyes. Same dock, same lake. But it was November now, gray and cold. No laughter, no kids running through tall grass. Mark wasn't a little boy with a frog anymore. He was a 45-year-old man who tried to steal his mother's home. And Robert was gone, but I was still here. Standing on the dock he built, in front of the house we built together, and I wasn't going to let Mark take it. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the lake house from the dock, the angle we'd used for the Christmas cards we sent out every year, the view Robert loved best. I texted it to David Chen. "I'm ready to file, protect my property, do whatever it takes." His response came back in less than a minute. I'll have the paperwork ready tomorrow. We'll file by end of week. I stood there on the dock for a long time, watching the water, feeling the cold November air. This was mine. This dock. This house. These memories. Robert had given them to me. Not to Mark. To me. And I was going to fight for them. When I got back to my car, I saw Mark's SUV pulling into the driveway. He got out, saw me. His face went through several expressions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt. He walked toward me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "It's my property," I said. "I can be here whenever I want. We need to talk about this, reasonably, like adults." "I've been reasonable for 3 years, Mark. I let you manage things. I let you pay the taxes and change the locks and switch the utilities to your name. I was reasonable, and you tried to steal my house. That's not—" "I saw the emails," I said. "The ones you sent to Jennifer, about adverse possession, about me being too trusting, about how by the time I figured it out, it would be too late." His face went pale. "Mom, I can explain—" "I'm filing a legal claim. My attorney is preparing the paperwork. This house is mine, legally, completely, and you need to accept that." "You're taking me to court?" He looked genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe I would actually fight back. "Over a house?" "Over my home. The home your father left me. The home you tried to take." I was trying to help. "No, Mark. You were trying to help yourself. There's a difference." I got in my car, started the engine. Mark stood in the driveway watching me. He looked lost, confused, like a little boy who got caught doing something wrong and couldn't understand why he was in trouble. But he wasn't a little boy. He was a grown man who made grown-up choices. And now he had to face the consequences. I drove away, and I didn't look back. That night, Carol came over. Tuesday casserole, chicken and rice this time. We sat at my kitchen table. The evidence binder was still there, open to the email tab. Mark's words staring up at us. Too trusting. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. "How did it feel?" Carol asked. Telling him. "Scary," I said, "and necessary." "Good. Both of those things can be true at the same time." I looked at the casserole. At Carol sitting across from me, at this kitchen table where we'd sat every Tuesday for 3 years, where she'd brought food and friendship when I was drowning in grief, where she'd told me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For not letting me ignore this, for telling me to get a lawyer, for being here." Carol reached across the table, squeezed my hand. That's what friends do. I didn't know it then, but Mark was already planning his counterattack, and it would get worse before it got better. David filed the legal claim on Friday. I signed the paperwork in his office. My hand shook a little, not from doubt, from the weight of it. This made it official. I was taking legal action against my own son. "The court will process this within a week," David said. "Mark will be notified. He'll have 30 days to respond." "And then what?" "Then we see if he contests it. If he acknowledges your ownership and agrees to vacate, this ends quickly. If he fights, we go to mediation. Possibly court." I nodded, signed the last page. It was done. That night, I sat alone in my condo. Quiet, too quiet. I made dinner, leftover chicken, microwaved. I ate it standing at the kitchen counter because I couldn't bring myself to sit at the table where Carol and I had coffee every Tuesday, where we'd gone through all the evidence, where I'd realized my son was trying to steal from me. I thought about calling someone, but who? Carol had her own family dinner on Fridays. Sarah was probably with her kids. Tom hadn't returned my calls in 2 weeks. My phone rang. Sarah. "Mom?" Her voice was tight, worried. "I just heard from Mark. He said you filed a legal claim against him. Is that true?" "Yes." Silence on the other end. I heard her breathing, processing. "Mom, I know what he did was wrong. The emails, the way he talked about you. But taking him to court? That's permanent." He tried to take my house, Sarah. What would you have me do? I don't know. Talk to him? Work it out as a family? I tried that for 3 years. I let him manage the property. I trusted him, and he used that trust to try to steal from me. He's my brother, and I'm your mother, and that house is mine. Another long silence. I know, Sarah said finally. Her voice was softer, sad. I know you're right. It's just hard, watching the family fall apart. It fell apart when Mark decided property was more important than honesty. I want to help you, Mom. I do. But Mark called me 3 times today. Jennifer's been texting. They're saying you're overreacting, that they were just trying to help, that you're destroying the family over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. I have emails, proof. He planned this. I know. I believe you. She trailed off. This is hard. I understand. You don't have to choose sides, but I need you to know the truth, and I need you to tell the truth if anyone asks. I will, I promise. After we hung up, I felt a little less alone. Sarah believed me. That meant something. The next Tuesday, Carol brought casserole, tuna noodle. We sat at my kitchen table. She poured coffee, asked how I was holding up. Mark was served yesterday, I said. David called. He has 30 days to respond. How do you feel? Scared, relieved, both. Carol nodded, pushed the casserole toward me. You need to eat more. You're losing weight. I'm fine. Barbara. Okay, I'm not fine, but I'm standing. That counts for something. She squeezed my hand. It counts for everything. 2 weeks later, the counterclaim arrived. Certified mail, thick envelope. I opened it at my kitchen table, hands shaking. Mark was suing me. My own son was taking me to court. His claim stated that I had verbally gifted him the property 3 years ago, that I'd given him permission to manage it with the understanding he would eventually take ownership, that he'd invested $50,000 in improvements and maintenance, that he'd been treating the property as his own with my full knowledge and consent. It was all lies. But they were lies written in legal language by an attorney, and now I had to prove they were lies. I called David immediately. I got the counterclaim, I said. My voice was shaking. I expected this. Take a breath. We knew he'd fight back. He says I gave him the property, that I verbally gifted it, that he invested $50,000. Did you give him verbal permission to take ownership? No, never. Did he invest $50,000? I don't know, maybe in maintenance over 3 years, but I never asked him to. He said he was helping. That's his strategy. He's going to claim you gave him implied permission through your actions, by letting him manage the property, by not objecting to his payments. It's weak, but it's something. Can he win? No, not with the evidence we have, but it means this goes to mediation, possibly a hearing. It won't be quick. I hung up, stared at the counterclaim documents. My son's signature at the bottom, Mark Daniel Thompson, the same handwriting he'd had since he was 12, when I used to help him with homework at this same kitchen table. That night, Mark's attorney called me, Gerald Morrison. His voice was smooth, professional. Mrs. Thompson, I represent your son, Mark Thompson. I'd like to discuss a settlement that might work for both parties. I'm listening. Mark is willing to acknowledge your ownership of the property. In exchange, he and his family would like to remain in the house rent-free for 5 years while they secure alternative housing. Given the investments they've made and the disruption this would cause to his children's education, no. Mrs. Thompson, I encourage you to consider. 5 years of Mark living in my house establishes long-term residency, which strengthens an adverse possession claim. My attorney explained that. The answer is no. Silence, then. I see you've been well advised. I have. Is there anything else? Mark would also like to discuss mediation, a neutral third party. Perhaps we can reach an agreement that doesn't require court intervention. My attorney will be in touch. I hung up. My hands were still shaking. But I'd said no. I'd drawn a boundary, and I hadn't apologized for it. The following week, Jennifer called. She was crying. "Barbara, please, you have to stop this. Mark is falling apart. His business is struggling. The stress is killing him. And the kids, Brandon and Emily, they're so upset. They don't understand why their grandmother is doing this. I'm protecting what's mine, Jennifer. It's just a house. It's my home. The home Robert left me. The home you and Mark tried to steal. We weren't stealing. Mark was trying to help, to take care of it for you. You don't even use it. That doesn't make it his. Please, Barbara, think of the family. Think of your grandchildren. They love that house. It's where they grew up. You're taking away their home." I felt something twist in my chest. Guilt. The same guilt I'd felt for 3 years every time I tried to say no to Mark. Every time I wanted to set a boundary but didn't because I was afraid of losing my family. But then I remembered Mark's email. Too trusting. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. "Jennifer, I'm sorry the children are upset, but Mark made choices that led to this, not me. You're choosing a house over your family. Mark chose a house over honesty. I'm just protecting what's mine." She hung up on me. I sat in the silence of my condo, wondering if I was doing the right thing, wondering if maybe I should just let them have it, keep the peace, preserve what was left of my family. But then I thought about Robert, about the way he'd looked at me when we broke ground on that property, about the yellow roses he planted, about his will that said specifically, "To my beloved wife, Barbara." I couldn't give up. Not now. That Saturday, my book club met at Carol's house. We'd been meeting for 15 years. The same 8 women. We'd seen each other through divorces and deaths and cancer and grandchildren. We were more than a book club. We were family. I hadn't told them what was happening, but Carol had. When I arrived, they were all there. Louise brought her famous brownies. Martha had coffee. They hugged me, asked how I was, offered help. "If you need anything," Louise said, "you call. Any of us, we mean it." "I don't know what I need," I said. "You need to know you're not alone," Martha said. "That's what you need." We didn't talk about the book that day. We talked about property rights, about elder abuse, about families that turn on you when you least expect it. And we talked about standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. When I left, I felt stronger. Not because they'd solved anything, but because they'd reminded me I wasn't alone. The mediation was scheduled for 6 weeks out, January 10th. A retired judge named Nancy Williams would facilitate. Both attorneys, all parties present. David called with the details. Be prepared for Mark to make emotional appeals, to bring up the past, to try to make you feel guilty. Stay focused on the facts, on the evidence. Don't let him manipulate you. What if I can't do it? You can. You've come this far. You can finish it. On Christmas Eve, Tom called, my youngest son, the one who'd moved to California and never looked back. "Mom, Mark told me what's going on with the house." "And what did he tell you?" "That you're suing him, taking away his home, that he tried to help you and you turned on him. That's his version. Would you like to hear mine?" I told him. Everything. The birthday dinner, the property tax bills, the emails, the counterclaim. Tom listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Mark made it sound like you were being unreasonable. But if he really sent those emails, that's messed up." "It is. What can I do?" "Nothing. Just believe me. That's enough." "I do. And Mom, I'm proud of you for fighting back." It was the first time Tom had said he was proud of me in 20 years. I cried after we hung up. Good tears, relief tears. The certified letter arrived 3 days later. Mark's attorney, another settlement offer. Mark would acknowledge my ownership, pay me $15,000 for my trouble. In exchange, I would allow him and his family to purchase the property at below market value over a 10-year payment plan. I read it twice. Then I called David. "They're trying to buy your house for less than it's worth," David said, "while staying in it rent-free during the payment plan. It's another bad offer. I'm not selling." "Good. We'll see them at mediation." That night, I looked through old photo albums. Sarah had brought one by earlier that week. Photos from her high school graduation, the party we'd had at the lake house in 1999, Sarah in her cap and gown, Mark in his 20s, still hopeful about his business, Tom as a teenager, already planning his escape to California, Robert alive, healthy, smiling. We'd been a family once, a real family, not perfect, but together, and now we were fractured, broken, divided by property and pride and choices that couldn't be undone. I closed the album, put it away, and I reminded myself, I didn't break this family. Mark did. When he decided a house was more valuable than his mother's trust, the mediation was in 2 weeks, and I was ready. The mediation was scheduled for 9 in the morning on January 10th. David picked me up at 8:15. I wore the gray suit I'd bought for Robert's funeral 5 years ago. Professional, serious. I wanted them to see I meant business. "Remember what we talked about," David said as we drove downtown. "Stay calm. Don't let Mark provoke you. Stick to the facts. The evidence speaks for itself." I nodded. My hands were folded in my lap. I'd barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say. But now, sitting in David's car, I couldn't remember any of it. The mediation office was on the 4th floor of a professional building. Neutral territory. Not a courtroom. Just a conference room with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Nancy Williams, the retired judge serving as mediator, was already there. Late 60s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She looked kind but firm. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, shaking my hand, "thank you for being here." Mark and Jennifer arrived 10 minutes later. His attorney, Gerald Morrison, carried a briefcase. Mark looked tired, thinner than I remembered. Jennifer's eyes were red. She wouldn't look at me. I saw Mark glance at me. Our eyes met for a second. He looked away first. Before we went in, Mark caught me in the hallway. Jennifer and the attorneys had gone ahead to set up. It was just us, mother and son, standing in a beige hallway with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "Mom," he said. His voice was quiet, desperate. "Please, can we talk before this gets started?" "We're here to talk, Mark, in front of the mediator." "No, I mean really talk. Just us, like we used to." I looked at my son, at the man who'd written those emails, who'd called me too trusting, who'd tried to steal the house Robert left me, and I tried to see the little boy who used to collect rocks from the lakeshore, the one who'd helped his dad hammer nails even though the hammer was too big for his hands. I couldn't see him anymore. "What do you want to say?" I asked. "I'm sorry, I messed up. The business, it's failing, Mom. I'm in debt, a lot of debt. I thought if I had the house, I could use it as collateral, get a loan, fix everything. I wasn't trying to steal from you, I was trying to survive." "You lied to me, Mark, for years." "I know." I panicked, and once I started, I didn't know how to stop. "But we can fix this. We can work something out. Just drop the claim, please. Don't make me lose everything in front of a judge." "This isn't a judge, it's a mediator." "Same difference. Mom, I'm begging you, think of Brandon and Emily. They're going to lose their home, their school, everything." I felt the old pull, the guilt, the desperate need to fix things for my children, to make everything okay. That's who I'd been for 68 years, the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over. But I wasn't that person anymore. "You should have thought about Brandon and Emily before you tried to steal from me," I said. "I'm not the one who put them in this position. You are." "Mom, let's go inside, Mark." I walked past him, into the conference room, sat down next to David. Mark came in a minute later, sat across from me, Jennifer next to him, she was crying silently. I felt a pang of something. Sympathy, maybe, or just sadness that it had come to this. Nancy Williams took her seat at the head of the table. Thank you all for being here. Let's begin. This is a mediation regarding property located at... She read the address of the lake house. Mrs. Barbara Thompson claims sole ownership. Mr. Mark Thompson has filed a counterclaim asserting verbal gift and investment rights. We're here to see if we can reach an agreement without court intervention. Mr. Chen, would you like to present your case first? David opened the binder, the one we'd spent weeks preparing, tab by tab, evidence by evidence. Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Williams. David smiled slightly. Old habits. My client, Mrs. Barbara Thompson, is the sole legal owner of the property in question. I'd like to start by presenting the original deed. He placed it on the table, in the center, where everyone could see it, the county seal. My name, Barbara Thompson, sole owner. Transferred from joint ownership upon the death of Robert Thompson, February 2019. Nancy Williams picked it up, examined it, read every line, put it down. The deed is clear, she said. Mrs. Thompson is the registered owner. Mr. Morrison, does your client contest this? Gerald Morrison cleared his throat. My client doesn't contest that the deed bears Mrs. Thompson's name. However, he contends that his mother verbally gifted him the property 3 years ago, and that he has since made substantial investments and improvements under the understanding that he would eventually take formal ownership. Do you have documentation of this verbal gift? It was a verbal agreement between mother and son. We have evidence of Mr. Thompson's continuous residency, his payment of property taxes, his maintenance investments. Let's look at that, David said. He pulled out the next tab, property tax records. Mrs. Thompson authorized her son to pay property taxes on her behalf as a convenience while she grieved her husband's death. At no point did she transfer ownership or indicate intent to gift the property. He laid out the tax records. Side by side, the old ones with my name and my address, the new ones with my name but Mark's address. You'll notice, David continued, that the property owner line still lists Barbara Thompson. Mr. Thompson changed the mailing address without authorization. He also began listing the property on business loan applications as collateral, again without his mother's knowledge or permission. David placed copies of the loan applications on the table. Mark's signature. The lake house listed as business asset. Jennifer made a small sound, a gasp, maybe, or a sob. But most telling, David said, is this email chain. He put the printed emails on the table. Mark to Jennifer, Jennifer to Mark. The words we'd all read a dozen times. But seeing them here, in this formal setting, in front of the mediator and Mark's attorney, it hit differently. Nancy Williams read them slowly. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten slightly. Mr. Thompson, she said, looking at Mark, did you write these emails? Mark's attorney jumped in. My client, I'm asking Mr. Thompson directly. Mark looked at the table, at his hands, anywhere but at me. Yes. And did you, as stated in this email, plan to establish adverse possession of your mother's property without her knowledge? Silence. Mr. Thompson? Yes. But I didn't think she needed it anymore. She never visited. I thought, what you thought is irrelevant, Nancy Williams said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. What matters is what you did. And according to these emails, what you did was attempt to defraud your mother of her property. Jennifer put her head in her hands. Mark's attorney shuffled papers, trying to regroup. Mrs. Williams, Gerald Morrison said, my client acknowledges mistakes were made. However, he did invest considerable time and money into the property. We believe compensation is warranted. Let's hear from some witnesses, Nancy Williams said. Mr. Chen? David nodded. I'd like to call Sarah Martinez, Mrs. Thompson's daughter, Mr. Thompson's sister. Sarah had arrived separately. She'd been waiting in the hallway. She came in now, looked at Mark, looked at me, sat down in the witness chair. "Mrs. Martinez," David said gently, "how would you characterize your mother's relationship with the lake house property?" "She loved it," Sarah said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "It was her and my dad's dream. They built it together. After Dad died, it was hard for her to be there. Too many memories, but she never ever indicated she wanted to give it away. She always called it my lake house. Always." "Did your brother Mark ever mention plans to claim ownership?" Sarah looked at Mark. "Yes, about a year ago. He said Mom was getting older, that she didn't need such a big place, that it made more sense for him and Jennifer to have it. I told him he should talk to Mom about it properly, have a real conversation. He said he would, but instead..." She trailed off. "Instead, what?" "Instead, he just took it, or tried to, without asking." Mark's face was red. He was staring at the table. "Thank you, Mrs. Martinez," Nancy Williams said. David called Carol next. She was calm, professional. Years of financial advising had made her comfortable in these settings. "Ms. Henderson, you're Mrs. Thompson's neighbor and friend? For 40 years, since she and Robert built the house. In your observation, did Mrs. Thompson ever express intent to gift the property to her son?" "Never. She talked about updating her will to make sure it was protected. She worried about Mark's financial situation. She wanted the house to stay in the family, but she never said she was giving it to Mark specifically. In fact, she asked me several times if I thought it was strange that Mark had changed all the utility bills to his name. She was concerned, but she didn't want to cause family conflict." "And did Mr. Thompson ever discuss his plans with you?" "No. He avoided me. I think he knew I'd see through it." Carol looked at Mark. "I told Barbara she was being taken advantage of. I'm sorry I didn't push harder." There were other witnesses. Briefly, the county clerk confirmed that someone matching Mark's description had called asking about title transfers. The insurance agent confirmed Mark had switched the policy to his name without my authorization. David kept it short, efficient. But the pattern was clear. Mark had systematically taken over my property, piece by piece, without permission. Finally, Nancy Williams turned to Mark. "Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to say?" Mark looked up. His face was pale, exhausted. He glanced at his attorney. Gerald Morrison nodded slightly. Permission to speak. "I know what I did," Mark said. His voice cracked. "I see it now, the emails. The way I talked about my mother. It's inexcusable. The business is failing. I have a gambling problem. I owe $180,000. I thought if I had the house, if I could use it as collateral, I could fix everything. I could get a loan, pay off the debts, save the business. I thought I could make it work before Mom found out. I thought I was solving a problem." Jennifer was crying openly now. Mark reached for her hand. "But I wasn't solving anything," Mark continued. "I was stealing from my mother. I was lying to my family, and I was too proud to admit I'd failed, too scared to ask for help the right way, so I took the coward's way out, and I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." I sat there listening to my son confess, and I didn't know what to feel. Vindication? Sadness? Relief that he'd finally told the truth? All of it, and none of it. Nancy Williams let the silence sit for a moment. Then she spoke. "Mr. Thompson, do you have any legal claim to this property?" Mark's attorney started to respond. Nancy Williams held up a hand. "Mr. Thompson, not your attorney. You. Do you have any legal claim to your mother's property?" Mark looked at me. Finally. Really looked at me. And I saw my son. Not the man who'd tried to steal from me, but the boy I'd raised, the one I'd loved, the one I'd failed somehow, somewhere along the way. "No," Mark said. "No, I don't." Nancy Williams nodded, wrote something down, looked at me. "Mrs. Thompson, what resolution do you seek?" This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I could finally say what I needed. I looked at Mark, at my son who'd betrayed me, who'd called me too trusting, who'd tried to steal the last thing Robert left me, and I said what I'd been too afraid to say for 3 years. I need you to understand something, Mark. This isn't about revenge. This is about respect. Your father and I built that house with our own hands. It's my home. It's my memories. It's the one thing Robert made sure was mine. You don't get to take it because you made bad choices. You don't get to steal from me because you're desperate, and you don't get to call me too trusting, like my love for you was a weakness. My voice was steady, firm. I wasn't yelling, wasn't crying, just stating facts. I want my property back, completely. I want Mark and Jennifer to vacate within 60 days. I want all utilities, insurance, and tax bills returned to my name. I want my keys back, and I want it understood, legally, officially, that this house is mine, not his, not ever. Mark was crying now, quiet tears. Jennifer had her hand on his shoulder. Nancy Williams wrote it all down, looked at Gerald Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, does your client accept these terms?" Gerald leaned over, whispered to Mark. A long, whispered conversation. Finally, Mark nodded. "My client accepts," Gerald said. "Then we have a settlement," Nancy Williams said. She wrote out the terms. Both attorneys reviewed. Both signed. Mark signed. I signed. It was done. When the mediator read the settlement aloud, making it official, I didn't feel triumphant, just tired, relieved, but mostly tired. I walked out of that office with the settlement papers in my hands. 60 days. Mark had 60 days to get out of my house. David walked next to me. Carol was waiting in the lobby. She hugged me without saying anything. "You did it," David said. "I know." "How do you feel?" I thought about that. How did I feel? My son had admitted he tried to steal from me. He was broken. His marriage was probably over. His business was failing. He had 60 days to uproot his entire family, and I'd won. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Ask me in 60 days. But the hardest part was just beginning. Mark and Jennifer moved out on March 8th, 59 days after the mediation, 1 day before the deadline. I wasn't there. David advised me to stay away. Let them pack. Let them go. Don't make it harder than it already was. So I waited at my condo. Carol came over. We had coffee. We didn't talk much. Just sat there while the clock ticked past noon, past 3, past 5. At 6:15, David called. "They're gone. The house is yours." The next morning, I drove to the lake house, alone. The driveway was empty. No cars, no moving trucks, just gravel and silence. I walked through the front door with the key David had secured from Mark's attorney. The house smelled different, closed up, stale, but it was quiet, mine. They'd left it clean. I'll give Jennifer that much. Floors swept, counters wiped, no trash, no damage. Like they were trying to leave with some dignity intact. But they'd taken things. The couch we'd bought together in 1992, the coffee table Robert made in his workshop, some of the framed photos from the walls. I noticed the gaps, the empty spaces where memories used to hang. I didn't cry about it. They needed furniture. They were starting over. Let them have it. I walked down to the dock, stood where I'd stood in November when I'd decided to fight. The lake was different now. March cold but not frozen, gray water, no ice. Spring coming, but not here yet. Robert's yellow roses were still dormant. Brown stalks, no leaves, no blooms. But I could see new growth at the base, small green shoots. They'd survive the winter. They'd bloom again in June. I thought about Robert, about what he'd say if he could see me now, standing alone on this dock. The house behind me, empty but mine. I think he'd be proud, not because I'd won, but because I'd fought. 3 days later, Sarah came to visit. She brought Emma, my granddaughter. They'd stayed away during the mediation, during the move-out, too much conflict, too much pain, but now they were here. "Mom," Sarah said. She hugged me on the porch, long and tight. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. When I first noticed what Mark was doing, I should have warned you. You did what you could. You told the truth when it mattered. That's enough. We spent the afternoon going through boxes in the garage, old photo albums, Christmas decorations, things I'd stored and forgotten. Emma found pictures of Sarah's high school graduation, the party we'd had here in '99. Sarah looked so young, so happy. That was a good day, Sarah said, holding the photo. It was. Can we have more good days here? Me and Emma? We could come once a month, have lunch, walk the property, just be together? I looked at my daughter, at my granddaughter sitting on the floor surrounded by memories, and I realized something. The house wasn't just mine to keep, it was mine to share, on my terms, with people who respected it. I'd like that, I said. The following Tuesday, Carol came over with casserole, chicken, and rice. We sat on the deck even though it was cold, bundled in coats, drinking coffee. You thinking about renovations? Carol asked. She'd been looking at the deck boards. Some were rotting. Mark had talked about fixing them, but never did. Maybe. Nothing major. Just repairs. Make it safe. I could help. My nephew does construction. I might take you up on that. We sat in silence for a while. Comfortable. The kind of silence you can only have with someone who's been through it all with you. Thank you, I said, for everything. For not letting me ignore this. For sitting with me in my kitchen at midnight. For bringing casseroles every Tuesday even when I couldn't eat. That's what friends do, Carol said. She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. And maybe it was. I met with David one last time. His office. The same office where I'd signed the original claim 4 months ago. He had the final paperwork ready, property returned entirely to my name, all utilities, all tax bills, insurance, everything. Your house is secure, David said. He offered me a hard candy, butterscotch. I took one. And I'd recommend updating your estate plan. Make sure your wishes are crystal clear. Prevent any future disputes. I want to set up a trust for Sarah and Tom and Emma. Skip Mark entirely. David didn't judge, just nodded. We can do that. Revocable living trust. You maintain control during your lifetime. Upon your death, the property goes directly to the beneficiaries you name. No probate, no contests. How soon can we do this? I can have documents ready next week. We spent an hour going through details. Who gets what? When? Under what conditions? I wanted it ironclad. No loopholes. No room for Mark to manipulate Tom or Sarah after I was gone. When I left David's office, I felt lighter. The house was mine. My estate was protected. I'd set boundaries that would last beyond my lifetime. That weekend, I planted new roses, right where Robert had planted the first ones in '86. The original bushes were still there, still blooming every June, but I wanted to add more. Different colors, pink and coral and deep red, a whole garden. Carol helped me dig. We worked in silence, hands in dirt, March sun warm on our backs. It felt good, physical, like I was planting something more than roses, like I was planting a future. Robert would like this, Carol said. I think so too. That night, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine, first one I'd had in months. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water orange and pink. The roses were planted, small and vulnerable, but they'd grow, they'd bloom, they'd last. I heard a car in the driveway, looked up. Sarah's minivan. She got out, walked over to the deck. I have something for you, she said. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, Mark's handwriting. He gave this to Carlos, Sarah explained. Asked him to give it to me, to give it to you. I read it. You should too. I opened the letter. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. I've spent the last month in therapy trying to understand how I became someone who would steal from his own mother. The answer is slowly. One bad choice leading to another. One lie covering up the last one, until I was so far in I couldn't see a way out. The gambling started 5 years ago. Small bets, sports, then bigger bets. Then I was borrowing money to cover losses. Then I was desperate. And the house seemed like the answer. If I could just use it as collateral, if I could just get one big loan, I could fix everything, but I wasn't fixing anything. I was making it worse. And I was hurting you. The one person who'd never let me down. I'm in Gamblers Anonymous now. Jennifer and I are in marriage counseling. We moved to a smaller place. The kids change schools. It's hard, but it's honest. For the first time in years, I'm being honest. I don't expect your forgiveness. But I want you to know I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because I lost. But because I hurt you. Because I took your trust and your love, and I weaponized them against you. You deserved better. You deserve better. I hope someday I can be someone you're proud of again, but I understand if that day never comes. I love you, Mom. Mark. I read it twice. Sat there holding it while the sun finished setting. Sarah sat next to me. What do you think? I think he means it, but meaning it doesn't undo what he did. No, it doesn't. Can I forgive him someday? Maybe. But I can't trust him. Not anymore. And I can't have him in my life right now. Maybe not ever. I need to protect myself. That's fair, Sarah said. And Mom, that's not cruel. That's just honest. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. I'd keep it, but I wouldn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some boundaries are permanent, and that's okay. 6 months later, I wake up in my lake house, the house Robert and I built, the house I fought for, and it's just mine. Some people might call that lonely. I call it peaceful. 6 months later, I wake up in my lake house, the house Robert and I built with our own hands, the house I fought for, and it's just mine. The morning routine is simple now. Coffee on the deck, even in November cold. I wrap myself in Robert's old flannel jacket and watch the sun come up over the water. The yellow roses are dormant again, waiting for June. But I know they'll bloom. They always do. At 8:30 every morning, I look across the lake. Carol's on her deck. She waves. I wave back. If I don't wave back by 9, she calls. That's our system. That's how we take care of each other. Some people might call this lonely, living alone at 69, no husband, one son who doesn't speak to me. But I don't call it lonely. I call it peaceful. I call it mine. Sarah and Emma come twice a month. We have lunch on the deck. We walk the property. Emma asks questions about her grandfather, about the house we built, about why some families fall apart. I answer honestly, not everything has a happy ending, but some things are worth fighting for anyway. Tom called last month, from California. He's planning to visit at Christmas, first time in 5 years. We talk more now, not about Mark, not about the house, just about life, about his work, about whether he'll ever settle down. It's not deep, but it's real, and that's enough. The book club meets here once a month now. 8 women who've known me for 15 years. Louise brings brownies. Martha makes coffee. We sit on the deck and we talk about books, about grandchildren, about getting older, about the things that matter when you realize time is finite. They never ask about Mark. They know better, but they're here. That's what matters. I volunteer at the senior center now, 3 days a week. I teach a class on estate planning and property rights, how to protect yourself, how to recognize elder financial abuse, how to set boundaries with adult children who feel entitled to what you've worked for. The class fills up every session. 15 seniors, some widowed, some still married, all of them worried about money, about property, about family taking advantage. Last week, a woman named Dorothy came up to me after class, 72. Her daughter had been pressuring her to sign over the house. For tax purposes, the daughter said, to avoid probate. Don't do it, I told Dorothy. Not unless you want to. Not unless you have an attorney review it, not because someone pressures you. But she's my daughter. I know, but it's your house. Dorothy cried. Said she'd been feeling guilty for months, like she was being selfish, like she owed her daughter the house because family is family. You don't owe anyone your security, I said. Helping family is beautiful, but not when it costs you everything. She thanked me. Said she was going to talk to a lawyer. Said she felt less alone knowing someone else understood. I drove home that day thinking about how many Dorothys there are, how many people being manipulated by their own children, how many families tearing themselves apart over property and money and inheritance. I can't save them all, but I can tell my story. I can teach what I learned. I can help one person at a time set boundaries and protect themselves. Maybe that's my purpose now. Maybe that's what came from all of this. The estate is settled. The trust is ironclad. When I die, the lake house goes to Sarah and Tom equally. Emma gets a share too. Mark gets nothing. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I'm honest. He made his choices. These are the consequences. Some days I still can't believe it happened. My own son, the boy I raised, the child I loved more than anything, tried to steal from me, called me too trusting, like my love was a weakness. But I'm here. I'm standing. That counts for something. Last week, I got a Christmas card from Mark and Jennifer. Generic. A family photo. Brandon and Emily, so much older now. Mark looks tired. Jennifer's smile doesn't reach her eyes. No personal note, just season's greetings printed inside. I put it on the fridge. Not because I forgive him, not because we're reconciled, but because he's still my son. And maybe someday we'll find a way to be in the same room again, but not today, maybe not ever. And I'm okay with that. I've been thinking about my next birthday, 69. Carol suggested we have dinner here. Just the book club. Casseroles and cake. Nothing fancy. No drama. Just women who've earned the right to celebrate without apologizing for taking up space. I said yes, because this is my house, my table, my life, and I get to decide who sits at it. If you're watching this and someone in your family is pressuring you about property, about money, about what you owe them, listen to me. You don't owe anyone your home, your security, your peace of mind. Helping family is beautiful, but protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And if you have to fight for what's yours, fight. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I'm rebuilding. It's not the life I planned when Robert and I broke ground here 40 years ago, but it's mine. I'm standing, and nobody's going to take advantage of me again.